Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to another installment of Prospero in Bermuda with your host, Steven. Wow, my head's red from wearing that hat. It's been quite a while. I've done very little recording this year, unfortunately. Well, I've been very sick. I've been very ill. I'm sort of in recovery from it now. We're back. So it's been an eventful summer. I went off and I did the Camino de Santiago through Spain. It's the 7th time I've walked the Camino, full Camino, 7 in 7 years. I've done the Francés 4 times and the Portuguese 3 times from Lisbon up to Santiago and from Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to Santiago and then on to Finisterre. This year it was again the Francés, very challenging. I have a very bad chronic leg injury that so far with physio we've not really been able to fix. So this year was pretty tough because I wasn't really able to enjoy the walk so much. It was more of a contest of my will to, I was just saying, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to let pain stop me. It meant I met fewer people. There were a lot of, but I still had a good time. There were a lot of weird generation, more like millennial, social justice warriors on the trail. Usually that stuff doesn't happen. In all my years, I've maybe had one bad interaction. This year I had like 5 of them. It was weird. We're not even like discussing politics and religion because those things generally don't get talked about. Religion, spirituality does sometimes come up in the right company if you find like a kindred soul type thing. But definitely we avoid politics. But in these cases, every time we weren't even discussing those things. I just found that people would, particularly the Americans, would take offense at just a phrase that one would use, or just a figure of speech, or your tone, or something like that, or even the most mild joke. There were some folks that were just really keen to take offense, and it led to a couple of weird interactions. There was one where I was sort of staggering along, and she sort of pulled up next to me and was quite nice and was like, "Are you okay?" And I just gave her the thumbs up. "Yeah, I'm fine." And she just lit into me, telling me that the thumbs up was some racist, sexist, sexual harassment symbol. And I was like, I just stood there staring at her, not understanding anything that was going on. I've used thumbs up, thumbs up, everything's cool, hey, pilot, everything's fine. But apparently I looked it up after she vented her spleen at me and then stormed off saying, "I hope that you die of dehydration." That's what she said to me. I looked it up, and apparently there's a tiny faction of young people who have turned on the thumbs up emoji, and they think it means something sinister, sexual, to do with bums. But I mean, I was totally unaware of that, and I think most people don't treat it that way. I mean, certainly politically correct Google and Facebook haven't changed it, so... Anyway, it was just, I felt like there was a lot of mental illness on the trail this year that I'd never encountered before. But in any event, it was still, I mean, the ratio of phenomenal conversations to bad ones was still heavily in favor of the good ones. I mean, I met some incredible people in both on the trail, and then when I took 2 weeks and just stayed in Porto, which is definitely one of my favorite cities in the world. I could see myself living there. I also went to Bath in England to visit a friend. I absolutely love Bath. The little country roads and pubs and restaurants, and it's just such a beautiful place. It's quite expensive and gentrified, but if I had money, I'd want to live there for sure. Anyway, yeah, but I've also been very ill, and I'm sort of getting, I'm sort of coming out of that, and doing a lot better. So part of the sort of recovery process is to try to get my channel sort of up and running again. So maybe I'll do some readings. There's still 1 or 2 books I'd like to commit to, like a big one, like Les Mis or the Count of Monte Cristo, or maybe something a little smaller, I don't know. but also book reviews. So I'm just going to start with a quick one. This is Paul Maier, More Than a Skeleton. Paul Maier is a religious scholar who also writes fiction novels. In addition to More Than a Skeleton, he wrote a book called A Skeleton in God's Closet. That's the first one, featuring his sort of hero, Dr. John Weber, later joined by the heroine who becomes his wife, named Shannon. And in the first book, A Skeleton in God's Closet, a bombshell discovery is made which looks like to be the bones of Jesus Christ. Now, anyone who knows anything about Christianity says that, Christianity is fundamentally a religion based on evidence, and in the sense that it is falsifiable. For instance, if anybody did find the bones of Jesus and could demonstrate conclusively somehow that they were his skeleton, then that would rebut and refute the claim that Jesus rose from the dead and ascended into heaven afterwards, that he was merely a human being, and Christianity would be falsified. So in the first book, he's dealing with that scandal. It's going to be spoiler alert for all these things, because it's you kind of know how it's going to end because he's a Christian author. The interesting bit is just to see how he gets there. So yes, it turns out the skeleton is a fraud. It's always hoaxsters trying to demolish Christianity. And in this one the stakes are quite a bit higher. There's a man, an Israeli man, who appears and basically claims to be Jesus. His ministry is mirroring Jesus's life and ministry. Born in Bethlehem to parents, knows all these languages, appears to be able to perform all kinds of miracles and so on. And all the religions or all the sects of Christianity are coming together to recognize him as the Messiah returned. Some people obviously are skeptical of it. It turns out that he is a fraud, that he is he's a Jewish. He and his followers are Jews that wanted to take revenge on Christianity for mistreatment of Jews over the last 2,000 years by having this Jesus figure say that the Council of Nicaea got it wrong, that Arius was correct, that Jesus is not God, that he is merely a great prophet. And the hope is that that we would return to a kind of Christianized Judaism, worshiping the one and true God, and that would actually provide the necessary bulwark against the spread of Islam. But they directly address this, is that lest it be thought of as being anti-Semitic, because once the fraud is uncovered, and Dr. Weber is explaining to the audience, including the Pope himself and the Patriarch of Constantinople, lest we, stoke the fires of anti-Semitism just because the conspirators were Jews. It's also pointed out that it was Jewish people who rescued Weber from, the Jesus guy who was going to kill him, and it was Shin Bet, the Israeli version of the FBI. So it was these Jewish conspirators that caused it, but it was also Jewish people that aided and abetted the good guys in thwarting the machinations of the bad guys. So there's no sort of general bad statement against people of the Jewish faith. It's kind of a neat book. He's newly married to Shannon at this point, and throughout the entire book, it's like, oh, darling, I just want to hold you in my arms. They're clearly having a lot of sex, but it's the dialogue regarding it is totally cringeworthy. It's just on every chapter. It's like, oh dear, oh, I can't wait to kiss you, and the dialogue feels very stilted and unbelievable. Nobody swears or like, oh darn it, oh I'm just fooling you or something. Which I get it. It's Christian literature. It's certainly better than the Left Behind series. It's more. I think he understands Christianity a lot better. There's some intelligent dialectic discursives or whatever on certain truths of the Christian faith, which I liked. It's like a Christian Dan Brown novel. That's what I would compare it most to. It's instead of Dan Brown falsifying Christianity, you have this guy ultimately affirming it. Now, I was actually worried that this book, once they unmasked the false Messiah, that it would actually kind of cause doubts in your Christian faith, because you'd think, well, this guy was a fraud, so why wasn't the original Jesus a fraud? And he addresses that main point. He has these reporters ask the hero when he's giving this press conference talking about the false Messiah. I have to admit his explanation isn't that great. He kind of just says, well, these tricks by the trickster were all just derivative of the real thing. But you could just easily have fired back and said, well, you only are able to say that because we didn't have Shin Bet and you and everybody else investigating the claims of Jesus in the same way that you investigated Joshua Ben, whatever his name was. So, I don't know. I do feel that it does leave a bit of a seed of doubt, and all the characters are suddenly very happy to just say, oh, well, he was a false Messiah having believed it. I don't think he deals adequately with the psychological fallout that would have inevitably come from everybody, most people thinking this is the Messiah, to suddenly going, oh, well, he's not really the Messiah. Oh, well, it's okay. Jesus will come again. So it's a bit unbelievable in that respect. This book is then followed up by a book called The Constantine Code. I haven't read that one yet. I've read the first two. I'm going to read it. It's about supposedly, not just the lost ending of Mark, but like a whole other gospel. After this one, I kind of feel that one's going to be a bit anticlimactic. The claim just doesn't seem as bombshell as this one, but I'm still going to read it and just adjust my expectations accordingly. Would I recommend you reading it? No, which is why I didn't have, which is why I wasn't scared of spoilers. By all means do. I mean, as far as Christian literature goes, it's fine. But the problem with these books is that that it's always going to be a hoax. And the explanations to explain the hoax, it doesn't even always have a great explanation. He just says, well, Joshua was really smart, and that's why he knew 12 languages. He had parents that were microbiologists and came up with a protein that made him smarter than most people. And he was able to, devise a computer program that caused all the computers in the world to suddenly announce the coming of Jesus so that nobody else could figure out where that signal originated from. So it's like this ghost in the machine. Oh, he's just like supernaturally smart through science. And I thought, well, the explanations were, I don't know. They left something to be desired, but look, I got through the whole book. I read it. I didn't skim through it. 330 pages. So if you want to have a read, go ahead. It's a good airplane read. Anyway, that's my review. I would give it 2 out of 4 stars. Actually, I should do it out of 5. I'm going to do it out of 5. 2 out of 5. The 2 is for some interesting insights affirming Orthodox traditional Christianity, which is nice to see in a novel, especially of the Dan Brown genre type. But other than that, the cringeworthy dialogue between the husband and wife, everybody's a little bit too good, and the bad guys are just a little bit. It's very cardboard. But anyway, it's kind of a fun way to spend a few hours reading. All right, that is my review. I hope you're well. I will come back with more in the future as I continue to recover from my recent ailments. And doing a musical soon. I'm going to be doing excerpts. It's a medley of musicals. I'm going to be involved in the Rock of Ages segment, which is kind of cool. So I got to warm up my rock voice because I got to, sing some big songs that I haven't done any singing for months. So anyway, until next time. Peace out. Keep reaching for the stars. And, don't be Caliban. Ciao.